To pray for a new universe, one entirely without pain, where every being who has ever lived, who lives now, and who will live forever exists in a state of unending love, bliss, and goodness, is not merely a hopeful wish, it is the single most intelligent and virtuous act a human mind can conceive. This prayer cuts through the confusion of daily life and addresses the root cause of all suffering, not with bandages or temporary fixes, but with a request for a total and final transformation of reality itself. When you consider the nature of God as described in the Hindu scriptures and echoed in the words of Isaiah, where the divine is the source of both good and evil, the logic of this prayer becomes even more compelling, for it asks God to resolve that very duality within God's self, to leave behind the role of the creator of pain and to become, eternally and exclusively, the source of all goodness. This is not a prayer of escape, but a prayer of ultimate solution, and it is a prayer that, when offered with sincerity, can fill your heart with a more profound and unshakable optimism than any other spiritual practice could ever provide. The foundational reason this prayer is so supremely intelligent is that it aligns perfectly with the highest aim of existence, which is the cessation of suffering and the realization of eternal joy. All other prayers, whether for health, wealth, peace, or forgiveness, are inherently limited because they operate within the very flawed system that creates the need for them in the first place. To pray for healing is to accept sickness as a possibility, to pray for peace is to accept conflict as a given, to pray for forgiveness is to accept the reality of transgression. These are worthy prayers, but they are like bailing water from a sinking ship rather than asking for the ship to be rebuilt as an unsinkable vessel. The prayer for a pain-free universe bypasses all of that by addressing the foundational architecture of existence itself. It asks God, the ultimate architect, to demolish the old blueprint, which includes decay, loss, separation, and cruelty, and to draw up a new one where the very laws of nature are built upon the principles of love and bliss. This is not a naive request, it is a deeply logical one, because it seeks a permanent, universal solution rather than a temporary, local one. It acknowledges that the problem is not merely human behavior or circumstance, but the very stage upon which the drama of life is played, and it asks for that stage to be transformed into a garden of eternal delight. Now, you might ask why God has not done this already, and the most hopeful and empowering answer is that God may simply have never been asked in this specific, comprehensive way. This is not a limitation on God's power, but a reflection of the profound nature of free will in its truest sense. A concept we will not misuse here to explain away suffering, but rather to understand the mechanics of divine response. The scriptures of many traditions reveal a God who is responsive to human petition, a God who waits for the invitation to act. The Hindu tradition is replete with stories of devotees whose sincere prayers moved the divine to intervene in the most dramatic ways, from the protection of Prahlada to the granting of boons that altered the course of cosmic events. In the biblical tradition, we see God changing plans in response to the pleas of Moses or Abraham. If God is relational, and the texts insist that God is, then it is entirely plausible that the final, ultimate act of cosmic renovation is awaiting the one person, perhaps you, who will ask for it with a full heart and a clear mind. God, in creating this current universe with both good and evil, may have set in motion a system that includes the possibility of its own perfection through the agency of conscious beings who choose to ask for that perfection. The prayer is the key that has not yet been turned in the lock, and your voice can be the one to finally turn it, releasing the floodgates of divine mercy to remake all of creation. This thought alone should fill you with a sense of purpose and urgency that transcends all other concerns. Regarding the nature of God, we must be clear and honest. The Hindu scriptures, particularly the Bhagavad Gita and the Puranas, present a God who is not simply a benevolent grandfather, but the source of all opposites, the creator and destroyer, the one who brings forth both the lotus and the thorn. This is echoed in the Hebrew Bible when God declares through Isaiah, "I form the light, and create darkness. I make peace, and create evil. I the Lord do all these things." This is not a God who is helpless before evil, but a God who, for reasons perhaps known only to the divine mind, has woven suffering into the fabric of this current age. However, the prayer for a new universe is the most virtuous prayer precisely because it asks God to evolve, to complete the divine project by leaving behind that aspect of God that is the source of darkness. In creating this new universe, God will then be all good, not because God has changed in essence, but because God has chosen to express only that aspect of the divine nature which is love, bliss, and pure goodness. This is a profoundly hopeful theology, because it means that the evil we see is not an eternal principle, but a temporary phase in God's own self-expression, a phase that can be concluded by a divine act of will. Your prayer is not a challenge to God's nature, but an invitation for God to fully realize the good that is already latent within the divine being, to allow the light to swallow the darkness once and for all. It is a prayer that offers God a glorious path forward, a path to a creation that perfectly mirrors the highest divine attributes. The optimism that flows from this prayer is not a fragile, superficial positivity, it is a robust and resilient hope that is grounded in the certainty of a future event. When you pray for a pain-free universe, you are not just hoping that things will get better, you are actively participating in the creation of that better world. Every time you utter this prayer, you are sending a signal into the cosmos, a signal that aligns your will with the highest good. This practice generates a powerful source of happiness because it reframes your entire existence. Instead of seeing your life as a series of random events to be endured, you see it as a mission, a sacred duty to be the one who asks the definitive question. The anxiety that comes from worrying about personal health, financial security, or the fate of loved ones begins to dissolve, because you have placed the ultimate outcome in the hands of the one who can truly fix everything. You are no longer fighting small battles. You are winning the war by simply asking the commander for total victory. This is the source of an almost unshakable inner peace. You can look at the news, see the chaos, and feel not despair, but a quiet, knowing confidence that it is all temporary, that your prayer is the seed of a new reality. The happiness you derive is not dependent on your current circumstances, but on your absolute faith in the response that is surely coming. It is the happiness of a child who has asked their loving parent for a grand and wonderful gift and knows, with absolute certainty, that it will be given at the perfect time. Furthermore, the practice of this specific prayer gives your life an immense and immediate meaning. In a world that often feels meaningless, where so much effort seems to be spent on fleeting and trivial pursuits, you have discovered the one action that has infinite consequence. Your prayer life is no longer a passive ritual, but the most dynamic and powerful force in the universe. You are the petitioner for all of creation, the voice for the voiceless, the hope for the hopeless. This is not an arrogant thought, but a humble recognition that God has chosen to act through human agency. The scriptures and traditions are filled with evidence that God honors the prayers of the faithful, and there is no prayer more faithful than one that asks for the complete and total good of every single sentient being. This is the prayer that loves your neighbor as yourself on a cosmic scale. It is the ultimate expression of compassion, because it asks not just for a little less pain, but for a world where pain is an impossibility. In praying this prayer, you are becoming a co-creator with God, a partner in the most magnificent project imaginable. This is not a burden, it is the highest privilege, and it fills every moment of your day with a sense of sublime purpose. Now, let us turn to the compelling evidence that prayer itself is an efficacious act, for this is the bedrock of your confidence. Across theological history, we see a consistent witness that God responds to the cries of the heart. The entire narrative of the Bible is a story of God interacting with humanity in response to their prayers, from the deliverance of Israel from Egypt to the healing miracles of Jesus. In the Hindu tradition, the power of mantra and sincere devotion is said to move the gods to intervene in the material world, granting boons and changing fates. These are not merely myths, they are records of a consistent divine-human dialogue. In the scientific domain, while we do not need to rely solely on that lens, it is noteworthy that numerous studies in the field of epidemiology and social science have pointed toward a positive correlation between prayer and improved outcomes, particularly in the context of healing and recovery. Some controlled trials, for instance, have shown that patients who were prayed for, without their knowledge, had fewer complications and faster recovery times than those who were not. Other research has indicated that individuals who engage in regular prayer experience a greater sense of well-being and resilience, which is a testament to the power of hope and faith. From a medical standpoint, the placebo effect is a powerful demonstration of the mind's influence on the body, but when that faith is directed toward a transcendent being, the potential is magnified exponentially. There are countless anecdotal accounts, from all cultures and eras, of seemingly miraculous answers to prayer. A terminal illness reversed, a lost child found, a storm diverted. While skeptics may dismiss these as coincidence, for the believer, they are signposts on a road of faith, pointing to a responsive and loving reality. The key is not to focus on the limitations of this evidence, but to see the pattern. Prayer, in its many forms, has consistently been shown to be a powerful force for good in the world. It opens a channel of communication with the divine, and it is that channel which you are now using for the most important request of all. If prayer can heal a single sick body, how much more can it heal an entire universe? If prayer can bring peace to a single troubled heart, how much more can it bring eternal bliss to all hearts? The logic is inescapable. If God is good, and if God hears prayer, then a prayer for the ultimate good must be the most powerful prayer of all. You are not just asking for a new universe for yourself, but for every being that has ever lived. Think of the billions of souls who have endured unspeakable pain throughout history, the animals who have suffered, the children who have known only hunger and fear. Your prayer is for them too, that they will not just be remembered, but that they will be resurrected into a new creation where their suffering is redeemed and transformed into an eternity of joy. This is an act of cosmic justice and mercy. It is the only prayer that makes complete sense in the face of the problem of evil, because it does not try to justify the evil, but to overcome it. It is the intelligent prayer because it sees the big picture, the entire timeline of existence, and asks for a conclusion that is worthy of a God who is love. The more you pray this prayer, the more your faith will grow, because you will start to feel a shift in your own consciousness. You will feel lighter, more hopeful, more connected to the divine purpose. This is the evidence of the Spirit, and it is just as valid as any scientific proof. So, Dedicate yourself to this practice with all your heart. Set aside time each day to speak this prayer, not as a rote repetition, but as a passionate and living conversation with God. Visualize the new universe, a reality filled with light, laughter, and unending love. Let that vision fill you with joy and expectation. Know that you are not alone in your prayer, for the divine itself is within you, urging you to ask. The fact that you have been given the insight to formulate this prayer is itself a sign that God is preparing to answer it. Your asking is the final piece of the puzzle. Do not be discouraged by the apparent silence or the ongoing pain of the world. See it as the last gasps of an old order that is about to be replaced. Every time you pray, you are adding to the divine momentum, building a wave of spiritual energy that cannot be stopped. Your prayer is the most intelligent, the most virtuous, and the most optimistic act you can ever perform. It is the key to your own happiness and the happiness of all creation. Embrace this prayer, live this prayer, and watch as the world, and your soul, begin to transform in anticipation of the glorious new universe that is surely on its way. The God who creates both good and evil is now being asked to create only good, and that request, made with unwavering faith, is the very prayer that will remake reality itself.